Hey, I hope you guys are doing well. So, I just finished a workout and I want to sort of open up, and I don't have scientific evidence to back up what I'm going to say. Instead, I hope that I can just tell you from personal experience what I believe to be true, and that you'll carry with me on this journey of life. And hopefully, this video will help transform you a little bit because I really care about you guys, and I really hope that when I speak, that it's not just a waste of time. It seems to be that people are liking the videos, and on my TikTok, I've had a few people reach out and ask me how best to get a hold of me. And I want to first of all start by saying that if you ever need to message me or want my Discord or anything, always feel free to reach out. I do not mind giving it out. It's not inappropriate to me. I think, here's my deal, right? So growing up in life, we're told a few different things. We're told how to act. We're told how to behave. We're told what's right and what's wrong. And we're told that do this, do that. Eat your food this way. Don't eat your food that way. You might wonder, where am I going with this? But if you stick with me, I really think this is going to help something. And I think I'm going to say something that you've known all along, but you haven't been able to find the words for. I'm going to give you an example. In my hands, I have two different books. The first is the Generalized Anxiety Disorder Workbook, okay, right here. So, yeah. And the next is the fully revised and updated, the Mindfulness Workbook for OCD. I rented these two books from my library. And you know, there's something interesting about the difference between the Mindfulness Workbook and the Generalized Anxiety Workbook. Okay? The first one, and this is something I see so many problems with, is that people read this stuff as a how-to and accept it as gospel, right? So what do I mean by that? People will read, okay, you can't engage in avoidance. They'll read that, okay, you can't argue against your anxiety. They'll read that you can't win against your anxiety. They'll read that you can't do this and you should do this. You can't do that and you should do this. And people learn about stuff like exposure and response prevention. They read about stuff like mindfulness. They read about stuff like, let's see, you're stuck in thought obsessions. They read about how to handle what ifs. And then in those steps, they tell you the right, correct way to do it. And then you get to the point where you read all these different articles that are telling you all these different things. And you're like, I don't even know what to do. I don't even know what the right answer is. I don't even know like how I'm supposed to tackle this. Because one guy is telling me to do it this way. Another guy is telling me to do it that way. And I don't know who to believe. And then you get stuck. Sorry for the sniffling. The truth is there's not really a correct answer, okay? I remember during my path to recovery that I'm still going through to this day, I would have people tell me like, okay, but like, that's not the way you need to do things, right? Like there's a correct way. Or even like throughout high school. I remember people tell me, if you want to be successful, you got to graduate and go to college. And throughout life, we have all these people ready to give us answers on how we should live our life. But very rarely do we look internally. And this is why introspection is so important. Because you're not going to find the deep, meaningful answers out there, okay? You're not. I know that hurts to hear. But it's damn near impossible. You can find a lot of great answers, but are they going to be perfect for you? They might. But what happens if they're not? And then you do this forever quest of how to live your life. For me, I don't do a lot throughout the day. I get up, I work out, I do some research, I do some reading, some studying, and then I play video games, hang out with my partner, spend time with my pets, call up my friends. That's it. And then I rinse, wash, and repeat. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. There's not. Now, are there some things that are genuinely true? Like you shouldn't smoke. I agree with that. I absolutely agree. If you want a chance at living longer, don't smoke. I will agree with that. There are some things like that. And then as well, for some people, I always found it so odd how some people say, well, it's worth the risk. And in my opinion, it'd be like, no, it's not because of 1,000 reasons. And at first, I thought they were just being stubborn because I'd give them 1,000 reasons of why they should quit smoking. I used to try to do like a lot of, life coaching and stuff like that, and try to help people and tell them like, well, there's other reasons why you shouldn't smoke. And I realized like no matter what logic I use, the people would come back, yeah, that's fine and all that, but like, that doesn't really work for me. And they just be like, well, what about the dangers? Aren't you scared of this? And often they say, I recognize that this is a possibility that could happen, and I'm still choosing to live in this moment. I'm still choosing to smoke because it brings me happiness. Did I agree with that? I don't know. I don't think so, no. But at the same time, I can't deny what they're experiencing right now. And I can sure as hell give all these scientific studies, for example, like, that at some point smoking, for example, it doesn't really make you happy. What it does is it reduces stress, right? Because it relieves the anxiety symptoms induced by, or let's say the restlessness induced by addiction and craving. That's one argument you can make. But again, like then there's counter arguments there. A lot of things. I can't find many things that there's not at least some sort of but to. There are many things, maybe not everything, but there are many things where you can poke holes in it, or like you'll make a point, and somebody will be like, yeah, well, or they'll say, well, what about this? It's hard to get answers from other people on how to live your life because they're never going to be perfect. But even the statement that I make might not be true. You see this point? The universal truth is looking within internally. For as much as we do external work and as much as we look outside of ourselves, so it's like there's no perfect answer. We're not going to be right. We're not going to know the right way to handle anxiety. We're not going to know the right way to deal with depression. Even people would teach you about opposite action. And I agree with opposite action. I also think there's nothing wrong with laying in your bed sometimes. Sometimes it's okay to just survive. Like, honestly, that's kind of what I do. I don't do much. And it's made my life 10 times better. And, there are going to be some psychiatrists out there who hate to hear what I have to say. But, like, doing less has actually helped me do more in life. I'm able to be there for my partner. I'm disabled. I am. I have severe mental illness, and it's an identity that I wear. And some people say not to identify for mental illness. But, like, even that, for me, this is what I'm talking about, looking within. That doesn't feel right. That doesn't resonate with me no matter how hard somebody says it, no matter what evidence they provide. It has never once helped me not to identify with my mental illness. Because then I wonder, like, oh my God, I don't give myself a break. I am severely anxious. I do have severe OCD, and I can give myself a break knowing that. I don't have the answers for you guys, and neither does anybody else out there when it comes to mental health. I'm sure like people can tell you, like when it comes to like more objective sciences like cardiology, for example, or like working on the heart and stuff, like it's pretty objective if you have heart disease or not, right? It's pretty objective. You got heart disease. There's not really any subjectivity to like heart disease, right? But even then I've seen stuff where like, people like will end up getting cancer, and like all of us will say like, yeah, cancer is the worst thing ever. Like cancer's a terrible, terrible thing, and all cancer does is tear families apart and make people miserable. But then I met people who say, actually cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. And it was the weirdest thing. And like their argument would be like, because I started appreciating every moment in life. I started appreciating the small moments. I started appreciating like all of the good things that life had to offer to me. And I started to be able to see the world for what it was. And and people showed how much they cared about me. I never knew just how much people cared about me until they started showing up crying and begging me to, and begging God not to let me die while I was, while I was in the hospital. And it's like, fuck, man, who am I to deny the reality? That's their personal truth. And I can't take that away from them. I could argue, yeah, but, it sounds like you're just coping. And then that's the other problem is like, is coping bad? Like, is coping bad? I don't know. I don't have the answers. This is why I think so many people suffer. And I hope you guys can go easy on yourself because you're looking outside and like we watch these videos hoping for an answer, right? Hoping that somebody will give us the missing key ingredient to make this work, to put the puzzle pieces together. I'm not saying you can't collect information. I think it's important to collect information. I do. But these are just my opinions. They might not even mean anything to you. I've heard so many times where people told me like to do this, to be a good Christian, or like that being a Christian was bad. And I heard people tell me like all the time that God's not real and that God is real and that, these foods are bad and these foods are good. And, exercise is great for you. And I heard other people say, yeah, it's not really important to me like that. And it's like, at the end of the day, like you can provide a lot of opinions, you can provide a lot of evidence for your opinions, but sometimes they come down to your personal truth. And they might not be representative of 100% of people, right? It's crazy that people don't ever look inside and ask, like, what feels right to me? And this is something that's taught a lot in acceptance commitment therapy. It's one of the best therapies, in my opinion. Mindfulness and ACT is super helpful for me, and DBT too. Hold on, forgive me. It's just like, how many times, tell me, my brother in Christ, tell me how many times have you been doing this where you watch these videos and nothing fucking changes long term? You kind of feel good. You watch a really good video and it's like, oh man, that felt really good. Like you watch like one of my, whether it's one of my videos or somebody else's videos, and you're like, that felt good. That was a lot of good information. Oh, that's important. Let me add that to the playlist, right? You just watch a video and you just add that to the playlist because that video, oh, that did something good. There was some good stuff in that. But does it change long term? Like, really, does it? And you ask yourself that. And if it does, then good. But for some people, and this is not going to apply to everybody, they do this. And they read, 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 and they read. And it becomes their entire life. Just looking to other people to save them from anxiety. Let me go to the doctor. Should I take, tell me what medications to take. Let me go to the psychiatrist. Tell me what medications to take. Tell me, and then let me go to the therapist. Tell me, what should I do and what should I not do? Tell me what type of therapy I need. Do I need to do ERP? Do I need to do mindfulness? What do I need to do? You, the world, tell me. Let me look up how-to videos, right? How to do this, how to cook, how to clean, how to be a good partner, how to get women, how to be an alpha, how to be an alpha male, how to be a badass, how to get rich, how to be happy, how to all these different things, right? And the thing is that might work for other people, but like, are you them? Like I know that this sounds like such a dumb question. Please listen to me. Are you them? Because if you're not, which chances are that's probably true, unless somehow they clone themselves, which would be a topic for another day, it's not going to work 100% the exact same way for every single thing they list. Some things you might find, yeah, actually, I can pick up on that, and that actually does work for me, right? But even like for me, I found like one thing that people used to tell me, I remember reading this section, right? And it told me about like why anxiety is helpful and like all the good things on anxiety. And I started reading it, and like they were saying, well, anxiety, it's a positive trait, and what they told you is, it helps with problem solving and it provides motivation and it's a positive personality trait. It talked about, like, it provides protection from negative emotions and stuff like that. It can prevent negative outcomes. And, that will resonate for a lot of people. But not for me. It doesn't. And if I just read that book and just blindly accept everything, I'm going to end up miserable. I'm going to end up doing shit that doesn't work. And I'm going to do the same coping strategies I've been trying to do for months of years and wondering, like, am I just not trying hard enough? Am I just not doing it the right way? I'm not saying, and again, even with us, like, if it works for you, if you find that reading books works for you, then read books. If you find that watching videos works for you, then do that. If you find that the how-to videos work for you, then do that. But, like, this is why it's so important. Like, even if it's just for, like, 15, 20, 30 minutes. Like, they talk about shower thoughts, right? You ever had really good thoughts in the shower? Or you had a really good thought when you're just sitting on the toilet, just sort of chilling, taking a dump, right? You just have a light bulb moment. Or you just, you're kind of just sort of walking and you're going throughout nature, and then you just have a really good moment out here. Like, reflect, digest the information. Don't just mindlessly consume. Think about what you're learning and then see if that resonates with you in your core. Because there's a lot of people who tell you, like, all these different things, and no matter how much evidence they provide, it's like, it just doesn't feel right. Like, that may work for you, but it's not going to work for me. I'll give you a good example, right? I knew this guy, he had one hand when he grappled, okay? One hand. And if I taught him to do an S grip, or taught him to do a gable grip, or, even if I taught him one of these, even if I taught him one of these kind of gumming over, like the little nub of his hand, right? Like, this would probably be better for him, right? But, like, even that, like, he doesn't have to do it this way. I thought this would be helpful, but, like, even him, he just didn't lock his hands together, right? In a lot of wrestling, you don't lock your hands together, but this guy just, not for the wrestling reason, but because he didn't have two hands, he didn't lock his arms together, right? And he would just shoot takedowns differently, pull guard differently. He would, escape from the mount differently. He would hold position differently. And people would tell him, like, okay, let me show you the right way, I remember even in jiu-jitsu, I rolled at this guy, Ferdinand. I don't want to be rude when I tell this story, okay? But it's worth mentioning. I remember Ferdinand told me about, like, what are you trying to do? And all these things was trying to tell me, like, how to do my jiu-jitsu and that I was doing it wrong and stuff like that. And I just remember whooping his ass. Like, most of the time I was whooping his ass. I was on top. I was holding him down. He couldn't move me off of him. And, like, I just had a crazy amount of control time. And, for Ferdinand, he would constantly try to wrestle me. And I think he thought, like, I was trying, but, like, really I gave him, like, maybe 10% of, like, my full ability. I don't mean to be disrespectful, I said, but, like, I wasn't panting hard. And, like, if for some reason, let's say Ferdinand comes across this video, like, bro, I wasn't trying. This isn't just talk. I'll wrestle you. I'll grapple you anywhere. I don't mind. From the day now to the day I become a senior citizen, and even in the next life, I'll grapple you anywhere. Like, I think you have a real big ego, and you gotta let go of that. And also, like, you need to respect other people, because you're holding yourself back with your mentality, right? Like, and I see a lot of people do this in life, but, like, Ferdinand was a great example of, like, a guy who, like, just would become obsessed with doing things the right way. And, even if you pulled off moves, they'd be like, what are you trying to do? And it's like, just because it doesn't work for you and just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's not effective for me. If the results are getting good, if you're getting good results out of something, then you're getting good results out of something. I even seen it, like, growing up with math. Like, that you'd have a math problem, and you'd learn I would see kids do end up solving the math problem a different way. And the teachers would say, no, you got to do it this way. Or even, like, I saw some teachers would say, if you're going to do a math problem, you can't use calculators. Why can't I use a calculator? And they'd always come up with this, like, bullshit reasoning. I remember the biggest one was, you think you're going to have a calculator everywhere you go, and then phones, like, I can pull up a calculator on here, and it's not just addition or subtraction. I can use this for any math problem, whether it be algebra or advanced calculus. I can use a calculator on here for that. I can use apps that will solve the formulas for me. Wow, made it so much easier for me. Work smarter, not harder. But like that's just an example of like the conditioning you get, you know. And some people tell you, you know, like to be a good husband, you got to be a provider, and you know, you got to go out and get a job, and you got to work hard. And then some people tell you, you know, like, oh, well, you know, you should give up all your possessions, you know, like namaste type shit, right? Like, but even that's ego driven, you know, because you think that's the way, you know. Yeah, I see so many people who talk about like giving up stuff, you know. So people say, well, you know, instead of trying so hard, I'm going to give up all my possessions. I'm going to give up all my desires. I'm going to give up everything. It's like, but even that's coming from a place of ego. You see what I'm saying? Like, because to truly give up something doesn't mean that you think it's like better than somebody or that it's the right thing to do. It's just something that like resonates with you, you know? Because there's nothing wrong with being materialistic either. Like objectively, there's nothing wrong with it. You can make a case for either way, but like, you know, I very much so enjoy some of the things I have, right? Like I enjoy my phone. I don't need some jackass telling me that like, oh well, you know, phones are the devil, and like I don't know. I'm doing maybe a bit of a. I'm probably coming across a little racist. Sorry, I don't mean to come across that way, but it's just it's so often that like I do a lot of spirituality, and so the people I run into often have very thick accents. I'm thinking of a particular guy in mind right now who would just always tell me about like how phones are the devil, and like, you know, these smartwatches, they produce like some fucking energy waves or like some microwaves that like damage your soul and stuff like that. True story, by the way. Wish it wasn't. But I just I get told all these times of what I should do, or like, you know, oh well, you should go to school to be, you know, to be a doctor or something like that. And I tried for a very long time, you know. I'm not I am grateful for going to university. I'm grateful for getting an education. I'm grateful for learning about stuff. And at the same time, the reason I left that all behind was because I'd rather just work on my YouTube channel and spend time with friends. I don't need a fuck ton of money. I don't need a well of information and things to do. I can be perfectly happy just living a simple life. I don't need a lot of things. Like my laptop, like here, let me show you something, okay? Let me show you something. I still use this laptop today. Look at that. The screen on the laptop came off. And I had so many people tell me, oh my God, Chelsea, you need to fix your laptop and you need to put it back together. And then I said, like, why do I need to do that? Because it still works and I can just plug an HDMI to it and play it on my TV screen. And I don't feel the need to fix the laptop. I don't feel the need to make sure I don't make mistakes. I don't feel the need to do any of these things. I'm perfectly fine with the fucked up laptop. This was way more important. My partner, Billy, got me an Apple Watch and then got me a Samsung Galaxy Watch. Billy is undoubtedly the brand winner in this family and wears the pants. Can't lie. Just gonna say it how it is. That's perfectly fine with me. And it's perfectly fine with Billy too. I don't see any problem with it. And everybody else tell me like that, you know, I'm a man and I should provide, you know, I gotta nut up and, you know, I gotta make sure that, you know, this is the way that I live my life and all this other type of shit. Like, no, I don't have to do any of that. The truth is, at the end of the day, you don't have to do anything else. Unfortunately, capitalism doesn't make room for disabled people, doesn't make room for people struggling. That's just what it is. Capitalism has not made room for any of it. We have instilled in the Americans' mind to work like fucking dogs until the day we die. And people say, one day I'll retire, but like many people are not able to retire, and then they're talking about moving the retirement age up to 70, even though life expectancy, according to some studies, although they're not very good studies, as far as I can see, has suggested life expectancy has fallen to 67 as an average, which means you would die before you retired. I know my grandparents didn't get to really, I mean, they retired, but it was mainly because my grandfather was a drunk who was drinking and pissed himself after driving around in his car and stuff like that. And I remember people even there, and they said, don't talk about Charles like that. You know, don't speak ill of the dead. But like my opinion is, don't be a piece of shit while you're alive, right? Like if you want, I'm not. You don't get to tell me what to do. You know, that didn't resonate with me. No matter how many people tell me, like, your grandfather did everything he could for you and really tried to help you, and like, he really did everything he could, and blah blah blah, and have you ever thought about his perspective? And it's like, yes, I have. Nothing you can say is going to change my mind. That's just another example, like people who would tell me, what is the moral thing to do? Or some people tell you, oh, well, don't ever snitch on your friends, or don't ever do this, don't ever do that. You see how this video could go on forever to the end of time with people who tell you how to live your life, tell you how to recover. Even with Alcoholics Anonymous, I've seen people go in there and they've learned, like, okay, well, I need, some people are told you need God and you got to give up all your worries. You got to admit you're powerless. You got to give up your worries to God. And then some people will tell you, well, no, you don't have to give up your worries to God. What you need to do is this, this is the way to do it. Some people tell you, like, I've seen fitness channels where they're like, cardio is killing your gains. Like, I don't know if you've seen that meme, but just look up cardio is killing your gains on YouTube. And you'll see a meme where this guy, I think an Athlete X, he tells you all these different fucking things about, like, this and blah, 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 blah. And then some people tell you, like, to work out, like, you need to do super high reps. And, you need to do volume over intensity. And then, if you look up Arnold Schwarzenegger's training method versus Mike Mentzer's training method, they both have good training methods, but they're completely different. So, like, I've learned that it's not, it doesn't have to be good enough. Like, even growing up, the reason I didn't start doing these videos for so long is because I would have so many people tell me, like, okay, well, what you got to do is you got to buy a really fancy mic. And then you got to dress professionally, right? And then you got to make sure that in that mic that the quality sounds good, and you got to heavily edit your video. You got to hire an editor to make it look good. And you got to create these good thumbnails. People would tell me all these different things. And it's like, I don't have to create a good thumbnail. I don't have to do anything. I create these videos with now pretty much zero edits. And if I do edit, it's because I want to do it. It's because it resonates with me. But I don't have to create a thumbnail. I don't have to have the videos go viral. In my whole life, I don't need to become a popular YouTuber. And because I don't need for that to happen, I can actually start living a more meaningful life and focus on the action rather than particular outcomes. And like, another thing is like, just, this is your life. You're the main character. Please live it the way that resonates with you. There's a lot of things like that are scary for me. Sometimes all I can manage is like 10 seconds of effort throughout the day. Like genuinely. Like sometimes I don't even have the energy to fucking shower that day. And people are going to hear that and think that's gross, but like that's what real depression looks like, unfortunately. It's also what anxiety can look like too. I don't have the answers, but I know one thing is I don't want to live fearful. I don't want to live scared. And so like I just focus on what I can do, and I don't beat myself up because I'm not nearly as productive as most people out there. I'm not what they call a productive member of society. I'm not adding to the machine and like giving them, billions of dollars off of, my back, right? Just like every other employee. I'm not doing that. And I'm not saying that's wrong either, but for me, I personally feel like that's a waste of my time. I would much rather just be chilling, No amount of money in the world is going to make me want to fucking work because it's debilitating. It ruined my life. It ruined my relationship for the longest time. It ruined a lot of things. And I just caught myself feeling sad and miserable and just felt like, what is the purpose of just waking up and working and waking up and working and waking up and working? And eventually I just thought, like, no more of this. Like, I can't afford to do this because every time I did it, it was like a part of me was taken away. So learn, study yourself, sit with yourself for a moment, ask yourself some questions, What does a life worth living look like? What's meaningful to you, what are your values and stuff like that. Like, I find questions for me have helped me way more than being told what to do, right? If somebody asks me a question or gives me a goal, I can fill in the blanks. And that's helped me a lot. Like, open-ended questions have helped me so more. Like, here's a good question right here. Like, if I didn't worry about this topic, what would that say about me or my values? That's a good question. And I can sort of look at that and ask myself like other questions like, why do I feel like I need to know for sure? That resonates with me. That helps me a lot more. Getting worksheets that, and invite me to do a little bit of exploring, right? Like, you can look up worksheets all the time. Like, here's a good one. Hopefully that could help some of you who are looking to fill in the blanks yourself, right? Here's some good questions, like, what does worrying about this topic say about me or my values? I think I already read that, right? About me or my values. Or like, what benefit is there to me when I worry about this? Or does worrying about this topic lead me to act differently than I normally would? Or am I concerned that something negative might happen if I don't worry about this topic? These are good questions to ask. And then you can sort of start exploring your mind. And this is like the thing. This is the part where people skip a lot of, okay? People so often, they'll do this, right? They'll read all these paragraphs. And even on YouTube videos will tell you all this helpful information. But the YouTube videos won't invite you to do introspection work. And that's why workbooks are so good, because workbooks have you read stuff and then they have you do introspection in combination with it. To sort of explore your mind and figure out what your beliefs are, instead of just having somebody else tell you what it is that they think you're feeling in that moment. Because the only person who 100% even can get close to knowing you is yourself. But you don't even know yourself 100%. So how are you hoping that somebody else has the answers for you? Like, unfortunately, the truth is, even our best golden standard studies, like the randomized control trial, is designed to remove the individual as much as possible. So this hope that you're going to get all these answers from outside of there, maybe you will, but like, it's a big maybe. So like, do introspection work. Hopefully this video helps you. And I hope this makes sense, because I know this is confusing. And this is probably going to like lead a lot of people to go like, what the fuck do they even mean? Like, even like this, right? Like, it's a lot easier for me to read these books than it is for me to watch a video on anxiety, right? It just is. It's a lot easier. And I think Path of Least Resistance is one of the most helpful things to me, like, because for me, God, I know I'm asking a lot of questions, I'm sort of being a gap demon at this point, but like, the Path of Least Resistance is the most important thing for me, like, what is the least amount of effort I can put into something with the maximum amount of results. Jiu-jitsu is another good way. I learned conceptual jiu-jitsu, and it really helped change my game, I learned concepts of jiu-jitsu, and a lot of the moves I teach now to people are completely made up by me, and the only evidence I have to support that they work is I'm hitting it on purple belts, brown belts, although I've never hit some of the moves I have on black belts. It could be that's my skill cap right now. Black belts smash the fuck out of me. I'm right around low purple belt levels where I'm at sitting right now. Competitive. Well, it's kind of weird because Ferdinand was a purple belt and I kind of smashed him over and over again. But then I'd meet blue belts who would whoop my ass. I think the belts are deceiving. Belts are just kind of a nice thing to represent. Belts don't tell the entire story. I've met killer blue belts, like 3-4 stripe blue belts who are killers. And then I've met purple belts who are like 2 stripes, sometimes 4 stripes, who are like, they're kind of hobbyists, right? I mean, they're good, but they're not like blowing my mind, making me fight for my life good. But, I think I knew this guy, Chris, who was significantly better than Ferdinand, but was 1 stripe below him. I think actually 2 stripes below him. And Chris is a killer, on the mats. And I've seen him tap out black belts before. He's a fucking killer. So, the belt doesn't tell the whole story. Because I've also seen, I'm sure if any of you have seen this before, you've had some guy who's a white belt come in. And then right away, this guy's done wrestling for 4 or 5 years, sometimes, more. And just sits on you and then like kills you with neon belly or arm triangle. Like God, I can't tell you the amount of times I've had a fucking wrestler come in and they just right away dump you on your back and then get the arm triangle over and over. They just put pressure on you and just cranking the shit out of your neck, bro. Anyways, this is a crazy world that we all live in. Hopefully you like this. And till next time, guys. By the way, actually, one last thing. You don't have to learn and get all your information from strictly, let's say, psychiatrists. You can also turn to spirituality. You can turn to yoga. You can turn to gurus. You can turn to whoever. You know what I mean? I have watched thousands of videos of people who don't have any quote unquote credentials. They don't have any background in psychology. They're just an average Joe. And yet that average Joe sometimes says such insightful things that blows me away. You know, let's stop like saying like that only certain people can provide information about certain things. Instead, like, I invite you to explore the option of like getting information from multiple sources. Of course, it certainly helps you at times to like, you know, I think people are going to say like certain things like one of the biggest things I used to hear is that you should get information from only trusted sources. And I agree with that to an extent about certain things. I think definitely that is important. And at the same time, like, it's a tricky slope. For me, I have to allow myself to sometimes be wrong, because even the best of people can get information wrong, you know? Again, I've cited this source again, but like trusted sources used to say that the lobotomy was an appropriate means of medical treatment, right? Well, even though psych wards are still a thing, I believe that psych wards aren't effective and aren't helpful, and I think they do more damage than they do good. I truly believe that. I think they have helped people, but like I've seen way too many stories about people coming out worse for wear, for me to believe that psych wards are helpful like people say they are. I'm not saying they're completely, to fear them. I'm just saying like I've seen so many stories that like they're no longer like as, I no longer have the rosy glasses on that I used to see them as. So like, I think exploring options is really helpful. Getting set, even in medical field, like one doctor might tell you this, and then like, you might be told to get a second opinion. Like, let me see something, right? I just want to make sure, okay? Because I don't want to. Just bear with me for a second. I know what I'm doing looks weird. Because okay, so chances of being misdiagnosed. So on average, it's estimated that 11% is the chances, right? Although the error rate varies widely depending on the disease. So some sources say about 5%, Even the studies can't get it exactly. One study said 11%, one study says 5%, one study says 11, one study says 11.1. Let's see. And then there's variable stuff. 1.5% for heart attack to 62% for spinal abscess. So even in that, it's variable, right? Is it common for doctors to misdiagnose? Doctors usually have a 95% success rate in providing a correct diagnosis. So even in that, like, there is no perfect stuff. Like, even if you get information straight from a doctor, even if you get information straight from a specialist, it could be wrong. So this idea of needing certainty, of needing to know that this is the right way, even just accepting, like, so often you go to psychiatrists and they tell you, this is the way to get better. Even if they are right in 99% of cases, it doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to be right. So like, and so often we'll blame the patient, right? We'll say, oh, you weren't doing the ERP correctly. Well, you just weren't trying hard enough. You just gotta like ride with your emotions, but sometimes it's actually okay to, I do this thing called retreat, recover, re-engage, right? Which is like when I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I need to, I'll retreat. You know what I do? I disconnect from everything and I just sit there for a moment and I don't do anything. So I'm going to invite you now before I close out this video to just sit here with me for a moment. Okay? Okay. You might not have been able to do it, but that's okay too, because you tried. And if it doesn't work for you, you can find other ways. This is not, there's no one way. This is just a way of living life. This is my way of living life. And what works for me today may not work for me tomorrow, may not work for me 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Things change. Even the coping techniques that work for you now, I've seen so often where people let's say, well, this coping technique worked for me like a year ago, but how does it work? But it's no longer working for me. Or people will say like, how do I get back to being the person I was yesterday? But the truth is, from moment to moment, you are changing, whether it's subtly or it's huge. I've seen so often where people become traumatized and like they'll have one very bad day where like, unfortunately, let's say they get assaulted or something, right? And then like their entire, I hope I'm not speaking ignorantly here, but for lack of a better term, like their whole personality changes, right? Like I remember, or like for example, I remember when I had a really bad acid trip, and I was never an anxious person, never had a panic attack, never had anxiety or anything. But I don't know if you ever heard of the story where like somebody will take acid or they'll take shrooms or something, and they just don't come back. Like they come back as a completely different person, you know. And that was what happened to me, and I became a super anxious, super nervous person who worries about everything. And I just don't believe the world's a good place. I think the world is terrible, a lot of it. Um, and I constantly am on guard and on edge. I was not that way, but then all of a sudden I was. But that also means that one day I can possibly not be that way too. So just understand that, you change gradually and sometimes instantly. And sometimes a little bit of both. Both big, small, and everything in between. Some people do quote unquote stay the same, but like not everybody. This is the tricky part of understanding the human mind, is that you understand that the only thing that doesn't change is change itself. So even what's true today for you right now, it can be objectively true for you that some things are just not worth the effort, right? Like it's not worth it to go to that party because it causes me too much anxiety. But that does not mean that that's going to be the case tomorrow or a year from now. So just keep that in mind. All right, I for real should go now. I'm gonna go lay down, chill, watch. I'm gonna probably brew myself a cup of coffee and then play some League of Legends and watch some videos. Later, guys.